Well, slap my knee and call me Sally. Looks like we've got ourselves another list of countries that folks wish they'd steered clear of like a skunk at a garden party. As someone who's spent more time south of the border than a drug mule named Juan, I can't say Mexico shocks me. Between the federales shaking me down like a Saturday night stripper and enough dirt to plant the world's biggest cactus, let's just say I've hugged my fair share of toilets. But Belarus, you've got to be pulling my leg harder than a tractor tipping contest. Unless you're Boris from Moscow, folks in Belarus treat you like a three-headed alien at a tea party. And Vietnam, talk about a country where everything's faker than my grandma's hip. They say opportunity knocks, but in these countries it's more like a knock upside the head. But hey, that's what credit card travel insurance is for, right? Now grab your passport and let's explore some of the international adventures real travelers wish they could erase. And we'll start with Mexico. Common complaints from expats include crime, police corruption, and dirty cities. Mexico always seemed an attractive option to move to, with its low cost of living and tropical weather. Yet many expats who took the plunge regret it. As an American who's visited the border towns, the complaints don't surprise me. The first complaint at bribing cops. The cops in Mexico love to shake down tourists for bogus traffic violations. I once had to pay $20 extra for sarcastically commenting that my blinker was working when a cop claimed my taillight was out. Corruption is rampant. The next complaint is dirty and dangerous cities. Big cities like Juarez and Tijuana are dirty and crime-ridden. No wonder 69% of Mexicans disapprove of Americans. While the low cost of living is appealing, you get what you pay for. The last big complaint from expats is cold reception. Unless you speak Spanish, good luck fitting in. Mexicans would rather have remote foreign workers than expats. Belarus and Vietnam also dislike outsiders, but at least they're upfront about it. Overall, Mexico seems an expat's paradise, but scratch the surface and you'll find cities that are kind of dirty. Rampant crime, police who love handouts, and locals who wish you'd stayed home. For Americans seeking sun, sea, and senoritas, buyer beware. There are many fish in the sea, so shop around before uprooting your life for a dubious tropical paradise. Moving on now to Belarus, where the locals don't welcome foreigners and winter months are long, cold, and dark. Belarus isn't exactly a hotspot for expats, and for good reason. The locals aren't too keen on outsiders, especially Americans, and winters last nearly half the year. Apparently 69% of Belarusians disapprove of Americans. Yikes. Unless you speak Russian fluently and are willing to endure frigid temperatures from November through February, Belarus may not be for you. The country has struggled economically for decades, so the cost of living is low. But the trade-off is little opportunity and a rather bleak quality of life. One commenter said they moved to Belarus for a tech job, but the company preferred they work remotely from outside the country. Another mentioned that even taxi drivers will try to scam you if they realize you're a foreigner. The few people I know who moved to Belarus complain mostly about the endless winter and unfriendly locals. Overall, Belarus seems an unlikely choice for expats seeking adventure. The cold climate and chilly reception would deter most, though the rock-bottom cost of living might appeal to some. Unless you have a peculiar fondness for Soviet-era austerity and take pleasure being an outcast, Belarus may be best avoided. But for masochists and misanthropes, it could be paradise. Next up on my list is Vietnam, where rampant fraud and scams make life difficult for expats. Fraud is rampant in Vietnam. As an expat, you need to keep your wits about you, unless you want to end up broke and on the first flight out. Take taxis, for example. The meter is usually broken, so the fare is whatever the driver demands, which is often 5 times the going rate. I found the best way to avoid getting ripped off is to have the hotel or restaurant call you a taxi. At least then the driver knows he's being monitored, so he's less likely to pull any shenanigans. Shopping is another minefield. Everything is a bargain, but in reality, the asking price is 3 times what the item is worth. And be very wary of too good to be true deals, especially on electronics or name-brand goods. Chances are you'll get home to find you just paid full price for a knockoff. My advice? Don't buy anything unless you know exactly what it should cost. Even then, be prepared to walk away. Overall, while the low cost of living in Vietnam is appealing, The rampant fraud and scams make life as an expat frustrating. The government cracks down occasionally, but corruption is so embedded in the culture that any progress is fleeting. If endless haggling and constant vigilance aren't your thing, Vietnam may not be the tropical paradise you imagined. For many expats, the cons ultimately outweigh the pros, but if you go in with realistic expectations, develop a thick skin, and learn quickly how to spot a rat, Vietnam can still be an intriguing place to experience for a while. Just don't expect to retire there unless you're able to shrug off being routinely ripped off as part of the charm. Next on my list is Germany. Germany seemed like a great idea at the time. After all, beer, sausages, and picturesque Bavarian villages, what's not to love? Turns out, quite a bit. Don't get me wrong, the beer and sausages are still awesome, but no one warned me about the soul-sucking winters. From November to February, the sun disappears, and an icy gloom descends. Vitamin D deficiency is real, people. The bureaucracy also requires Olympic-level patience. Everything requires a stamp, a form, and probably a notarized letter from your kindergarten teacher. Want internet installed? Fill out Antrag 408B in triplicate and await a visit from a technician circa 1962. Need a doctor? Hope you brought a book and snacks. Appointments are as rare as sunshine. And the service. Waiters glare at you for interrupting their smoke break. Retail workers can't be bothered to stop rearranging inventory. Asking for help elicits dramatic sighs, as if you just asked them to donate a kidney. Don't even get me started on Sundays, when everything shuts down so tight you'd think the Black Death was back. No shopping, no noise, no fun. Just stern disapproval from neighbors if you so much as run your washing machine. In the end, I couldn't hack it. The fantasy of a quaint, cultured life gave way to the reality of isolation and alienation. My advice? Visit for the bratwurst and beer, then get out before the winter sets in and takes your spirit with it. Germany is best enjoyed temporarily, with a return ticket in hand. Last on my list is the United States of America. Call me crazy, but the land of the free isn't all it's cracked up to be. I moved stateside 5 years ago, lured by the promise of opportunity and adventure. Instead, I got medical bills that would make a grown man weep and enough guns to outfit a small army. The work-life balance is a joke. Americans live to work, not the other way around. At least the food is decent if you don't mind gaining 20 kilos. The US isn't the worst country on this list, but after half a decade battling bureaucracy and baseball, I'm ready to toss in the towel. The American dream? More like an anxiety-fueled fever dream. Wake me when it's over. So there you have it, folks. The good, the bad, and the ugly when it comes to packing up your troubles and woes and moving far, far away. Sure, life might be cheaper in Mexico, but just remember that the federales aren't above a good old-fashioned shakedown. And Belarus, forget about it. The place is like the Hotel California of Eastern Europe. You can check in, but you can never leave without freezing off some essential appendages. As for Vietnam, well, let's just say everything is negotiable, especially if you're a tourist with a wallet full of dong. But hey, that's the glory of travel, isn't it? Expanding our horizons, challenging our notions, getting scammed left and right. At the end of the day, home is where your heart is. And if your heart is set on moving abroad, just make sure your travel insurance is paid up. Stay savvy out there, wanderers.